A lot of people have forgotten just how far the first person shooter genre, especially on consoles, has come in the last handful of generations. Before Halo, and perhaps to a lesser extent GoldenEye, the FPS was basically considered impossible to pull off in a satisfactory manner on consoles. It was thought that the controls would just never be precise enough. While the PS2 era definitely brought better shooters with it, they were still few and far between. Especially these days, it can be almost impossible to go back to many of them, which is why I found today's game, Cold Winter, so surprising. And now to be sure, the game carries with it a lot of the problems of the era. Aiming feels floaty, button mapping choices are odd, but it also makes some intriguingly unique choices. For starters, the game is a throwback, which seems like a weird thing to say about a game that came out in '05, but it's easy to tell the game borrows heavily from the N64's GoldenEye. From the way it controls, to the weaponry, to the espionage-focused story, it honestly feels kinda like an unlicensed James Bond game. In fact, I can picture the protagonist literally as James Bond without trying all that hard. But while Cold Winter borrows most liberally from GoldenEye, there are also some other more eclectic influences as well. Most often, it feels a whole lot like the classic N64 shooter, but it also has a distinct Deus Ex feeling to it every now and again. Your ability to manipulate the environment to create cover, the searching of bodies, and rudimentary crafting system all remind me of the earliest attempts by shooters to try and implement role-playing mechanics. But most importantly, they're used in a way that actually adds to the gameplay instead of just ticking some checkbox somewhere. I always felt like I needed to craft things, and I needed to use cover. They weren't just tacked on after the fact. All that said, even given the time period and the console it was released on, Cold Winter looks bad. The graphics aren't terrible by any stretch, but they're real uninspiring, especially by today's standards. The story, while it was somewhat impressive at the time, has also been surpassed by so many games at this point that what once seemed like an innovative and intriguing plot now feels rote and boring. But it's actually the combination of good and bad factors that I think really make this game worth a look. The fact that it feels old isn't an entirely bad thing. It plays like hardly any shooters do anymore, in both positive and negative ways. If you're looking for a fun corridor shooter with some neat mechanics, you could do a lot worse than Cold Winter. But know that it comes with a whole bunch of age-related problems to deal with. Every Monday, I look at a game that's at least 10 years old, what I would consider to be retro, and see if it's held up today. If you like that idea, be sure to subscribe so you can see the latest videos. If you like this video in particular, be sure to hit that like button.